February 1692 to May 1693, colonial Massachusetts was plunged into an era of darkness led by religious prejudice and superstition. The Salem witch trials, which were brought about by a rigid religious society that allowed their harsh beliefs to guide them into dark immorality. Puritan righteousness and the always present fear of personal damnation corrupted the minds and hearts of the colonists during this time. More than 200 people were accused of witchcraft, while 30 were found guilty and 19 were executed by hanging. At least 5 people died in jail. The Puritan period in New England brought about tragedy, death, and persecution. The first signs of the witch hunt were born in Boston in 1688 when Mary Goody Glover was accused of performing witchcraft on John Goodwin's 4 children. Reverend Cotton Mather wrote a book detailing the experience, describing the afflicted's behaviors and symptoms, which ended up matching the same behaviors and symptoms shown by the girls in Salem. The witch hunt in Salem began with 2 harmless little girls. Reverend Samuel Parris moved from Boston to Salem Village in November of 1689, along with his wife, his 9-year-old daughter Elizabeth, his 11-year-old niece Abigail Williams, and 2 slaves from West India, John and Tituba. Betty and Abigail grew up in a harsh, religiously structured environment that affected them negatively in different ways. For Betty, the mature concepts of damnation and death were too much for a young child to bear. The Puritan way of thinking and managing the terrors of life was meant for an adult mindset and resolution. The harsh ideas of damnation and death were overwhelming to this young girl and caused her great fear for the fate of her soul. On the other hand, Abigail Williams developed a smugness characterized by Puritan righteousness and deemed concepts such as damnation as a punishment enacted to others but not to her. She had been pushed down and quieted by this society and desired attention and to stand above. Both manifestations of Puritan societal corruption led to the accusations they would make in order to serve their personal motivations, Betty to be saved and Abigail to stand above the torment of others. Abigail and Betty attended several weeks of afternoon fortune-telling sessions with Tituba. They would perform rituals such as one called Venus Glass. This involved dropping egg whites into water, interpreting the shapes of the substance to learn about the future. Book A Modest Inquiry into the Nature of Witchcraft by the local minister, Reverend John Hale. There had been one occasion where the girls looked into the glass of water and saw the shape of a coffin. After several weeks of this, in January of 1692, Betty Parris and Abigail Williams began exhibiting strange behaviors and symptoms, such as screaming out in pain, erupting into strange fits, and insisting that there were evil spirits pulling at their skin. Ann Putnam and other girls also experienced similar symptoms. Dr. William Griggs could not determine anything physically wrong with the girls and therefore deemed them afflicted by witchcraft. The afflicted girls accused 3 women of bewitching them, Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne. The women were arrested on March 1, 1692. During her trial, Tituba expressed that she was a witch and that there were other witches in Salem. This confirmed people's fears of the devil's hand at work and sparked mass hysteria, which led to the Salem witch hunt. During a public fast brought together by the colonists on March 31st, Abigail claimed to have seen witches gathered around for sacrament, consuming flesh and blood through the use of red bread and red drink. During Elizabeth Proctor and Sarah Cloyce's trial on April 11, 1692, Judge Danforth inquired upon the nature of this observation. According to court records, this is what was said. Abigail Williams, did you see a company at Mr. Parris's house eat and drink? Yes, sir, that was their sacrament. How many were there? About 40, and Goody Cloyce and Goody Good were their deacons. What was it? They said it was our blood, and they had it twice that day. During this trial, the girls also turned on John Proctor, presumably due to his criticism of their actions. He would call them out as liars and stated that they should be whipped in punishment. Abigail Williams accused about 57 people of witchcraft, but only testified against 8 of them until her last testimony in 1692. After this, she does not appear in any more court hearings and is assumed to have been sent away by her uncle, Reverend Parris, but there is no evidence to suggest this. 15 people were executed and 1 tortured of the people that Abigail Williams accused or testified against. After the witch trials ended, several people fought to have Reverend Parris removed from the church. He responded by writing an essay titled Meditations for Peace, in which he claimed that the witch hunt beginning in his family was itself a personal punishment from God. He also excused Betty and Abigail's fatal accusations by stating that the sense of the afflicted that they strongly conceive their hurt is from such persons, when indeed it is not. His claims in this essay did nothing to redeem him, and so eventually he left Salem Village with Betty and, presumably, Abigail as well. Of all the afflicted girls who made their deadly accusations during the witch hunt, Ann Putnam was the only one to apologize for her wicked role. She submitted a handwritten apology to the Salem Village Church in 1706. Betty Parris went on to marry marry and live with her family in Sudbury, Massachusetts. There is no further record of the rest of Abigail Williams' life, and her death and her grave are unknown.